Greetings, YouTube. I have always had a difficult time following verbal instructions. And for 58 years, I didn't know why. I just thought I was broken. Then I was diagnosed with autism. And suddenly everything clicked into place and I came to understand why I don't understand verbal instructions well. And I've encountered numerous times in the last decade of my life very key examples that pop into my head every time I think about this topic. And my general consensus is fuck assumptions. A lot of neurotypical folks make assumptions with their instructions. Now, the assumptions they make are things that absolutely make sense to them. They absolutely seem to be able to communicate with a degree of assumptions that just baffles me. It is a secret language to me. It just, there's no way for me to crack that code. I need specificity and I need things to be explained in a way that the person is actually seeing them. What do I mean by that? Well, a couple of different times I can think of where someone has told me where something is on the right of an object or something's at the bottom of an object. Where I was looking at the object and the person was either physically not close to me or they were on the phone or something when they're describing something to me. And they weren't technically wrong. For example, the object was, if you were looking at the center line, the object was right of the center line. But was it all the way to the right? Was it the actual right side of the object? No, it wasn't. It was right of the center, and it was the object that they would just automatically apparently look at, or they have already figured out on their own. That's the target. But it isn't. It's here. And the right side of the object is actually over here. So when they say something like that, they're making some assumptions that just baffle me. I've had someone tell me that there was a problem at the bottom of an object. I'm looking at an object in front of me. They're telling me the problem's at the bottom, and I can't figure it out. It's like I can't figure it out. And the person's response was, "I know," because they were a very crappy instructor. So I let them get up next to the object. I could physically not be near it any longer. I just watched their hands from the back, and they came halfway down the object, and they found this problem. And I'm like, "That's not the bottom," because it wasn't the bottom. It was the bottom of something, I believe. It was like there was some object on that had an up and a bottom and top and a bottom, and it was the bottom of that object, but it wasn't the bottom of the entire structure. So if you're going to tell me that something's at the bottom, it better damn well be at the bottom. If you want me to go after something that's in the middle, and now I can look at the object and see that this object does in fact have a top and a bottom. Okay, now I know that you want to talk about this thing. But that's not what you said. You just made the bold assumption that ICE would be able to cyclically pick up from you that this is the thing you wanted to talk about. Just this past weekend, I had one of these things happen. And it was not an earth-shattering problem. It just wasn't. It was a minor issue that I'm sure that for the vast majority of neurotypical people would have been something they barely even blinked at. But for me, because the instructions were coming to me in a way that made absolutely no sense, it wasn't something that I just blink at and then move past. It was something that made me incredibly, unbelievably frustrated. And in response, I got angry because anger is a response to frustration. Now I was able to, thankfully, from the work I've been doing with my therapist, I've been able to work on that. And I've been able to kind of like forestall some of the investment I would have made in the past in that anger. I would have just kind of like gone into it and just be consumed by it, literally. Um, but then the realization hit me that I am never, ever, ever going to understand the world the way a neurotypical does. That I guess I've been deluding myself into thinking, okay, I've got my diagnosis. Now I can unpack what neurotypical folks do and say and act. And now I'll be able to look at it through the lens of through my perspective. and I'll be able to figure it out. And the reality is I'm not. I'm not going to figure it out. If people were to give me instructions the way I need them, I actually think the world would be a better place because there would be far less ambiguity. That the ambiguity would just go out the window. Because when I give instructions, they are very, very specific. Specific enough that they annoy the crap out of people for the most part. Because most of the time I'm talking to people that are neurotypical. And they apparently don't need the level of specificity that I do. But also, there are no missing details. I cover everything, which means the instructions tend to be long and complex. But they also are correct. And it doesn't seem to help when I'm teaching things to neurotypical folks because I give them more specificity than they want. Interestingly, when they gloss over the details that I've told them, they often encounter problems. And they don't seem to understand that if they hadn't glossed over those details, they wouldn't be experiencing that problem. But if you go to explain to someone that you have given very specific instructions to with even greater degrees of specificity, they tend not to react well. That I've noticed. I haven't had the opportunity to train autistic people in my particular job. I'd be intrigued to see if we would be able to communicate in a way that I can't with neurotypical folks. I might actually find someone that could follow my instructions correctly because they need the same degree of specificity. I don't know. I've never experienced it. Um, but yeah, this past week, I've encountered a frustration that has made me finally realize I am never ever going to get the grasp of the world around me the way I want to. That I am never going to be able to be given the amount and the detail of form of information that I need. It just isn't going to happen. That just knowing I'm autistic isn't going to help me crack that nut. That is nut that I cannot crack. Um, it's frustrating, and I don't have a solution to that one. I don't know if any autistic folks out there do, because I'd be all ears. But yeah, I wasn't happy about that particular revelation, particularly seeing it was on my vacation and just talking about it is kind of stressing me out. Um, so yeah, that has been my Christmas vacation of 2024. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that happened when I was experiencing it. All right. Well, I hope you folks had a better Christmas vacation for 2024. Um, and maybe you had revelations that were far more pleasant.